for me, my number 5 spot is actually going to be a tie. Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're going to get right into things here today. So, today, we are talking about the MVP award. And more specifically, we're talking about my top 5 for MVP this year. And I think what should pretty much be the top 5 right now for MVP. Obviously, we know when you look at the MVP award that it is a award that can define legacies, it can define seasons. When you win the MVP award, it's a pretty big thing, you know what I mean? It's the 75th season of the NBA, and nowhere near 75 players have won it because, there's been repeats and stuff like that. So, winning the MVP award is definitely something that not many players do. Many players go to the Hall of Fame without ever doing it, so if you are able to do it, it's a pretty significant accomplishment, and one of the hardest things to do in the NBA, probably other than winning an NBA championship, right? But with that said, we are talking about the MVP award today, and we're talking about this season's MVP award. So, before the season, I had a couple videos kind of talking about who I thought was going to win the MVP award, and we can talk more about that later. You guys can also go watch those as well. But for me, my number 5 spot is actually going to be a tie. It's going to be a tie between DeMar DeRozan and Chris Paul. And so I guess this is really more of a top 6, but I could not distinguish between the two who I just thought deserved it more, right? When you look at both these guys, I think Chris Paul obviously had a better case for it last year than he does this year, and I think it's sometimes kind of hard, at least for me, to picture DeMar DeRozan as an MVP level player. But DeMar DeRozan, he's 5th overall in the league in scoring. He's averaging 26, 5, and 4, and the Bulls are one of the best teams in the league, as they're the 3rd seed at this moment in the Eastern Conference, and that is right up there with Brooklyn and Miami and Washington, and those are kind of the top 4 right now out there. And they've looked good. They've looked good. He's been super good for them, and especially with how much criticism they got for signing him in this offseason, for how good they've been. I think that's a big story element for him as well in this award, is that everybody kind of criticized him and didn't think he was going to be good, and then he came out and was one of the best scorers in the league and led one of the best teams in the league. You see what I mean? So, and then the Chicago Bulls, he finally got them back in the playoffs, right? It's a big market, so I think that all works in his favor for the MVP award, and that's why I would put him at 5. Now, I don't think he's going to end up winning it, but it is a top 5, and you kind of have to fill out the top 5. Other than that, Chris Paul, a guy who I think had a better case last year, but he is having a good year as well. At least he's having a Chris Paul year as well. And he's averaging 14, 10, and 4. And being pretty solid, you know what I mean? Obviously, we know what Chris Paul is. His scoring's a little bit down from last year, but his assists are up right now and are hovering towards his career highs, where his career high is 11.6, so he's about 1 assist off of that right now. He's also near his career high in steals, where he's at 2.4 right now. His career high is 2.8, so he's having a pretty good season for himself so far. The Phoenix Suns, they started off super slow, but the fact that he's kind of been able to bring them back into the swing of things, and now they're the 2nd seed, only behind the Warriors, is very impressive, especially with the controversy that's going on with their owner and with DeAndre Ayton's contract and everything like that. So the fact that they found a way to win and all that, I think plays a large part in that. Now I do think that how they lost and that they lost in the finals could hurt him narratively wise. Also, along with it being his 2nd year in Phoenix and not his first. But I do think that, he has about the same level of a case as a DeMar because, all that controversy and everything that's going on, how he's kind of led them through the storm. And, ever since he got there, they've been winning. And before he wasn't there, they weren't winning. And all that, I think, still fits in narrative-wise for him. So, again, the MVP award is obviously a statistical thing and a individual effort. But it requires team success, and it requires... anymore in today's NBA, it requires to have a storyline and something that people can kind of put their heads behind and say, yeah, this works for an MVP. Like Jokic, best passing big of all time, right? Without without his second best player, was still able to, lead him to a high seed in the playoffs and everything like that. Worked for him last year, and so that's part of the reason that he won the MVP is because he had a convincing enough storyline to put behind the historic stats that he was putting up, right? And so yeah, those would be my 2-5s, or my 5th pick would be Chris Paul or DeMar DeRozan right now. Moving on to number 4, where I kind of think the race really narrows out. I think there's a big distance between 4 and 5 in this race right now, and I think there's a distance between 2 and 3 as well that's pretty significant. But 3 and 4 are very close together, and it starts to kind of become more realistic for them to win. And at number 4, I do have the one, the only Paul George. I think something that might surprise a lot of people there as a pick. Obviously, we've seen him high in MVP before, especially when he was in OKC, and he kind of was that definitive third to Giannis and Harden, where, at the end of the year, he was kind of really pushing to make a case for himself. I think part of that was narrative. Like, everybody didn't want to give it to the other two because it was just a race of 2, and they wanted to throw somebody else in there. But he definitely had a fantastic year that year, and he is having a fantastic year this year. So far, he is averaging 26, 8, and 5, and he's also getting over 2 steals a game. Again, he's close to his career high in steals per game, where his career high is 2.2 his last year in OKC. Right now, he's averaging 2.1, and again, that was his career high in points per game was 28 that year. His last year in OKC, he's at almost 27 right now, when a lot of the league is dropped in scoring, especially stars and stuff like that. And then his assists are up there near his career high as well, which again was his last year in OKC, his rebounds are up there near his career high, which again was his last year in OKC, where he had 8.2. This year he's at 8, so he's less than half a rebound away from his career high there. And his assists are near his career high as well, which was last year, where he had 5.2, and this year he's at 5.1. So near or at his career high pretty much in every single major statistical category. Not much of a block guy, but I guess technically he's tying his career high of half a block per game in his 2017-2018 season. But I'm not really going to count that since it's not like big for him in his game or anything like that. But he's near or at his career high in every statistical category that matter, like major statistical category that matters like that. And I mean, he's helping this team win. He's shooting over 36% from 3, which is a bit of a down year for him. And he's also shooting about 45% from the field, which is a little probably above his career high, or career average, sorry. But yeah, I mean, he's just helping this team win. This team is the 5th seed in the Western Conference. And it's a team without Kawhi, and it's had injury issues. And I think when we look at this team, especially coming into the season, we were kind of like, oh yeah, this is a team that, at least for me, it was like, okay, yeah, it's a team that'll be around, but they might, be like a 7, like a play-in team type of thing that makes it and kind of loses in the first round, or does something really big if they get Kawhi back. But Paul George, they've tapered off a little bit the last couple games. I believe they were like the 3 seed before Phoenix really started getting it going and everything like that. So they've tapered off a little bit in the last few games, but he's, like I said, he's scoring. They're winning. They're the 5 seed right now. If he bumps that up a little bit, he's definitely going to be high in this conversation, I think. Because typically you need to be a 4 seed or higher to win the MVP. A large reason why Steph Curry did not win it last year. Especially, they ended up not even making the playoffs, so voters just aren't going to award stuff like that, right? So if Paul George can push them back into that top 4 and keep doing what he's doing, he's definitely going to be in this conversation later in the year, and he's doing it without Kawhi Leonard, who is one of the best players in the NBA, right? So I think that is something that we have to look at, right? He's keeping this team where they were when losing the guy that was supposed to be the number one, is considered the number one option on this team, and Paul George just stepped up and kind of taken over that role, and instead of being the number 2, he's really kind of found his groove here. A guy that's been really solid throughout his career, right? He battled with the Heat when he was in Indiana, made a case for MVP when he was in OKC, and obviously here I think is making a case for MVP as well. So yeah, he would be my number 4, and I think he's definitely got a decent shot at it in the long run. And like I said, and I guess narrative-wise, right, he's doing it without Kawhi and everything like that, is going to be a lot of that narrative element there. And yeah, we'll just kind of have to wait and see for that. But for my number 3, it is the leader of the number 1 seed currently in the Eastern Conference. That would be the Miami Heat, and that would be Jimmy Butler. So he's led this team to an 11-5 record so far. Their defense has looked very good, and if he doesn't win MVP, I would bet that, like I said in one of my other videos, Bam Adebayo will win Defensive Player of the Year, because their defense has been insane. You guys can go check that video out as well, and I believe that was also a preseason prediction, just like my MVP videos that I posted. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I might have made that at the start of the season. Regardless, though, Jimmy Butler coming out, making a case for MVP. He's averaging almost 25 points per game, 5 rebounds and 5 assists as well, and is looking super solid. I mean, he's at a career high in points per game right now. He is, up there towards his career high in steals per game, where his career high is 2.4 in 2018-2019 in Minnesota. Right now he's at 2.1, which is tying last year. And then he is about his career average of like 5.5 assists. His career average being about 4 assists, so slightly above that. And then for rebound wise, again, around his career average his career average is 5.3. He's at 5.6 right now. So, not being asked to do as much of both of those. Obviously, bringing in Kyle Lowry does take away some of that assist opportunity. And even Lowry's a decent rebounder for a guard. So, and he's taken more of that scoring role. So, some of that's tapered off a little bit as well. But, he's a defensive guy that's super good, is playing really good offense, and is leading his team to wins. So I think the big thing here is it's going to be, for narrative-wise, when you're looking at it, it's going to be, hey, this guy is, he's the 12th best scorer in the league right now. Maybe he pushes that into the top 10. And he, this team, especially if they have the number 1 seed, that'll be big for him. Has the number 1 record in the Eastern Conference over a team like Brooklyn or whatever, or Milwaukee, who beat them last year in the playoffs, and maybe they really want to do something this year. They've got Kyle Lowry now. It's just kind of their revenge season after they lost in the finals, then they didn't have a great season last year. This is kind of their comeback season. They're going to go for it again, and I think that would be your narrative element when you're looking at Jimmy Butler to potentially win this. And again, I think him, being that so high in scoring, almost top 10 in the league in scoring, is huge for him in this conversation, because that year when they went on to make the finals, he was kind of thrown in the conversation a little bit, but, that year he only averaged just under 20 points per game. He averaged 19.9 points per game, so pretty much 20 points per game. And a lot of people struggled to say, yeah, this guy could win MVP when he's not averaging 20 points per game, because he's also got that great impact, that veteran leader impact on the team that I think we all recognize. But that can only take you so far when you don't have some of the stats to kind of mold with it. Because obviously, like I said, the MVP is a thing that just molds everything. It molds the storylines, molds the winning, molds the stats, molds the off-court effect, molds the leadership, all that. It just seems to mold together, and that's what especially today's MVP award kind of embodies, right? So him not having it that year really hurt him, and him having it this year I think is going to be a big help for him to potentially try and win this, as he is currently definitely in the race. But like I said, definitely a difference between 3 and 2, and I think you all know who my 1 and 2 are at this point. Kind of breaking down this list, it'd be hard to see who I would have out other than these two. But number 2 is going to be Kevin Durant. Definitely a super strong number 2. I think number 1 and number 2 have a little bit of a gap between them, but are much closer than like 3 is to number 2, or like even Chris Paul or DeMar DeRozan would be to Paul George there at 4. So I think, this is definitely a pretty tight race here at the top, and I would not be shocked if it comes down to these two guys at the end, with my number 1 being very, very good so far this season as well. But for Kevin Durant, this is a guy that he doesn't have Kyrie Irving, the guy that he went to Brooklyn and signed with and everything like that. James Harden is having a down year, so that's going to play a lot into the media. Now, James Harden started to pick it up as of late, but obviously, narrative-wise, that's going to fit in. And then when you look at his stats and everything like that, not scoring at his career high level, which was 2013-2014, where he had 32 points, but he's scoring 28, almost 29 points per game. He is getting about half a block a game, which is pretty low for him, to be honest. And then he's getting about half a steal per game, which again is pretty low. So his defense isn't quite all there this year, at least statistically, but again, scoring over 28 points per game, getting about 5 assists per game, and getting nearly 8 rebounds per game, which tapers near his career high of 8.3 in Golden State, his first year in Golden State. So at 7.9, he is almost, he's pushing for that. And obviously, we just know what Kevin Durant is, right? He's one of, if not the most lethal or one of the best scorers in NBA history. A guy that's 7 foot, can do it from everywhere on the court, and is just a problem to play against. Right now, he's number 2 in the league in points per game, though, so he's going to be fighting for that scoring title. And the Brooklyn Nets have looked good without him, or without Kyrie Irving. Without Kyrie Irving. And the fact that they're the number 2 seed, I think, shows a lot due to him, especially with the struggles that James Harden had to start the year. But to be the number 2 seed and tied record-wise with Miami is definitely a big testament to how good Kevin Durant has been this year, and how much, he just wants to win, right? Because this is a team that, has high expectations, has championship-level expectations, and, had some changes in the offseason, and especially not having its 3rd star is going to be pretty difficult. So I think that'll play a major part in his storyline of him not having Kyrie Irving and everything like that. But just the fact that, he's kept this team winning so much throughout this regular season so far to start things off, and he's played so well individually, is going to lean a lot into that potential of him winning the MVP for the Brooklyn Nets here. Because like I said, they're the 2 seed this year, and I think last year we expected them to do a little more than they did. Now, they did end up being the 2 seed last year, but they didn't feel quite like a 2 seed until they really got to the playoffs, where they felt like super good in the playoffs. But throughout the regular season last year, it kind of felt like they weren't the 2 seed, felt like they should have been by far and away the 1 seed, which the 76ers ended up nabbing from them by 1 win. But this year it feels like they're fighting for that 2 seed, and they feel like a strong 2 seed this year, whereas last year, until the playoffs, they kind of felt like a weak 2 seed and a question mark for the rest of the league, right? So I think them being in that strong 2 seed so far is definitely going to play a big part. And again, like I said, you guys can go check out my preseason predictions over a month before the season, where I predicted that Kevin Durant would potentially win the MVP this year. But the other guy I predicted would potentially win the MVP this year, in another video as well, was Steph Curry. Steph Curry for the Golden State Warriors, by far and away, I think, the number 1 pick for this right now. He didn't get the thumbnail from me. That went to Kevin Durant. I thought that was a pretty good thumbnail that I kind of came up with there for the video. But definitely a guy that has battled his way to the top of this list and stands up there on a statue right now. A team in the Warriors that has looked super, super good to start the year, only having 2 losses at this point, one of those coming just a few days ago against Charlotte, which was a 4-point loss, and then also their loss against Memphis earlier in the season, which again was a 3-point loss. So, having a 1-possession loss and a 2-possession loss, not getting blown out, blowing out teams, looking super good, not having Klay Thompson, and that'll be part of the storyline, is him not having Klay Thompson for like half of the year, him not having James Wiseman for a substantial part of the year, even though James Wiseman isn't like a star or anything like that. He was a number 2 overall pick. He's a name that a lot of people know, and that plays into storylines stuff and everything like that. And the fact that Draymond isn't a high stat guy, and that the rookies haven't come in and been super impactful for them, and it's been just these veteran guys that have just made stuff work, and Curry's worked very well with the system and with the team, as he kind of always does. But he's definitely by far and away the number 1 pick for this award. He's also, they blew out the Nets just a couple days ago as well, which I think extends that substantially, because I think prior to that it was definitely a closer race. But them beating the Nets by how much they did definitely does a lot for you in this race, when you can go head to head with that number 2 MVP candidate in Kevin Durant and beat them by a lot. And then not only that, but he's leading the league in scoring right now with 29.5 points per game, almost 30 points per game. He's getting over 6 rebounds a game at very small for the guard position, so that's a lot of rebounds for the guard position. And then 6.5 assists per game as well, along with shooting 46% from the field and over 40% from 3. Obviously, we know he barely misses free throws. He's shooting 95% from the line. But yeah, he's just looked super good. And for a while there, it didn't look like anybody was ever going to be able to even get close to them for the 1 seed when they only had that 1 loss to Memphis. Now, I think Phoenix has put themselves a little more in the running there, but they do still hold the 1 seed at 13-2. And if they keep it up, I would expect them to potentially be the 1 seed at the end of the year. I think another part, story element wise, obviously we talked about Klay, we talked about Wiseman and the rookies and everything like that. But he doesn't, like, it's not like he, from the media perspective, he really has a clear number 2 right now, right? I think his number 2 right now would probably be Wiggins. And, well, number 2, scoring-wise, I guess, would be Wiggins. His number 2 would be Draymond. But none of those guys really garner a lot of media attention. Draymond, obviously, I think, is in the race for Defensive Player of the Year himself, as the Warriors have been a very good defensive team, too. But they don't garner like MVP type of talk or something like that, where like for the Brooklyn Nets, James Harden, he can garner that type of talk next to Kevin Durant, even though he's not having his best year right now. But yeah, the Golden State Warriors, number 1 seed, have looked super fun to watch, and I think coming into the season, like I said, the part that'll play a big part in his narrative is the fact that people were predicting him to miss the playoffs or barely make the play-in, or I think people that looked at the roster and saw the improvements were kind of like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a mid-playoff team. This team, personally, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking, hey, this team can be a 4 or 5 seed and kind of do something here, but they blew that out of the water. They're the number 1 seed, and they're fighting very hard for the number 1 seed, because it shows that it looks like it matters something to him. And he, if he does come out and get that scoring championship, or not the scoring championship, the scoring title, sorry. If he comes out and gets the scoring title and they're the number 1 seed, I would more than guarantee that Steph Curry will win MVP this season. So, yeah, that's pretty much going to be it from me today. I hope you guys did enjoy. I know this was a little bit longer of a video, but I wanted to make sure I kind of fleshed out all the candidates that I threw out. Now, if you guys have any other guys that you guys think could be in this conversation at this point, let me know. If you guys disagree with how I ordered the list, obviously let me know, because I'd love to hear how you guys are looking at it. But yeah, for me, I think right now Curry is definitely my MVP, and I'm super excited to see how the rest of the season continues, as he's been very interesting to watch, and just a super fun player overall. So yeah, it's been your boy Dom, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace out, guys.